December 8th, 2015, regular meeting of the Troy Planning Commission. Copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting are available at the entrance to the room. Additionally, the agendas and minutes of prior meetings are available on the city's website. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agenda as presented or amended by the Planning Commission. The roles and responsibilities of the Planning Commission are outlined on the reverse side of tonight's agenda. State law establishes planning commissions. The commission is comprised of 9 members, all of whom have volunteered to serve. Members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by city council. The other individuals seated at the table this evening are representatives of the city's planning department, the city attorney's office, and the city's planning consultant, Carlisle Workman Associates. If you wish to address the planning commission, please come forward and recognize and provide your name and address on the sign-in sheet at the entrance to the room. Please begin your remarks by stating your name for the benefit of the commissioners. All remarks are to be addressed to the planning commission and not to anyone else in the room. At this time, I ask that all cell phones, Blackberries, PDAs, or any other devices that might disrupt this meeting, please either be placed in silent mode or turned off. Ms. Sarnicki, the roll call, please.
Mr. Abhidian?
Here.
Ms. Cruz?
Here.
Mr. Edmonds?
Here.
Mr. Faison?
Here.
Mr. Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Krent?
Here.
Ms. Koopa?
Here.
Mr. Stanzika?
Here.
Mr. Tagle?
Here.
Quorum present. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Number 2 on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Could I have a motion? I think before we approve this agenda, we have 2 major items on the agenda, the DTE and the site development. I think there are more people here from the DTE, so I'm going to recommend that we switch those 2 items. Could I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to switch those 2 items and approve
There's
the remainder
support.
of the agenda.
Is there support?
Support.
By Mr. Faison. Thank you.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Ms. Koopa?
Yes.
Mr. Stanzika? Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Abhidian?
Yes.
Next is the minutes of the November 10th, 2015 meeting. Could I have a motion to approve or suggested amendments?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Stanzika.
I'll
Supported by-
second.
Supported by Mr. Tagle. Ms.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Ms. Koopa?
Abstain.
Mr. Stanzika?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Abhidian?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Next is public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak to an item that is not on the agenda? Seeing no one, we'll move on to the Zoning Board of Appeals report. Mr. Sabadat?
Yeah, there was no meeting in November.
Okay, very good. I mean, that's good and it's bad, but.
There'll be a meeting in December.
Right, okay. The next item is the Downtown Development Authority report. Mr. Sabadat?
Well, it's good that there's no ZBA. That means there's no variance applications.
Right, that is good.
Yeah. There was a special meeting of the DDA on December 2nd, and the meeting was scheduled to provide the DDA an opportunity to learn about the Lean and Green Michigan and Property Assessed Clean Energy Program, or PACE. It's a program whereby businesses can get improvements related to energy efficiency financed through property tax assessment. It's a voluntary program. The first I learned about it was December 2nd. I've about spent my knowledge of the program. I did email all of the planning commissioners with the complete agenda from the December 2nd meeting for your information. I would answer any questions you have, but that's about the extent of my knowledge of the program.
I think it's safe to say if anybody has any questions about it, that they can send it to you.
Send them to me, and I can get them answered by people that know a lot more about it than I do.
Thank you, Fred. Next is the Planning and Zoning report. Anything new there?
December 22nd, I did poll all the planning commissioners via email to determine if we have enough people for a quorum, and we do. I think there's only 2 members that indicated they'd be absent, so We are going to have a meeting on December 22nd. We've got 2 public hearings scheduled. One is for a street vacation for a small section of alleyway, and it's fairly minor project. And the other is a public hearing on woodland protection. Also, we will be providing the Planning Commission with a complete draft of the master plan draft in the very near future. And at that meeting, we'll also be requesting the Planning Commission to make a recommendation to City Council to release it for public review. That's a mouthful.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, we'll go to the printed item number 9. Preliminary site plan review, file number SP1003, proposed DTE aerial substation, south of Maple, east of Doyle, parcel 882031-226-029, section 31, currently zoned IB industrial or integrated industrial and business district. You want to take this on?
Thanks. Good evening to the Planning Commission and the public. DTE is requesting preliminary site plan approval for a new substation on Doyle Drive. Doyle Drive is connected perpendicular to Maple Road and serves the transit center. It's located in the southwest corner of the city. DTE has purchased the southernmost triangle of what was at one point the self-storage facility that is located behind LA Fitness. It should be noted that Doyle Drive is both, part of it is both public and part of it is both private. The report that was distributed has incorrectly stated that construction traffic to the facility will occur via an easement through the self-storage facility as well as Doyle Drive off Maple Road. Since the report was created, the applicant has come to an agreement with the property owner, Grand Sakwa, who owns the Home Depot and Kroger's shopping center, to actually bring construction traffic behind the Home Depot, behind Kroger's, and up through into this section of Doyle Drive. Once that's complete, all access to the facility will be off of Doyle Drive on a new curb cut. Once complete, access to the site will be minimal and only be needed for continuing maintenance and service of the facility, but they do not expect much traffic to the site once completed. As for the proposed plan, DTE is proposing a substation. It includes 4 78-foot tall poles, 2 70-foot tall lightning masts, and various ground equipment. The equipment will be screened with a 12-foot high concrete wall. A rendering was included in your packet for consideration. The wall will be supplemented with significant landscaping along the frontage of Doyle Drive, including both evergreen as well as ornamental trees. The site lighting, as indicated by the applicant, is minimal and will only be used for emergency and during maintenance operations and will not be on at full time. And it should be noted that the use is a permitted use within the IB district. Based on those standards and requirements, we do recommend approval. Thank you.
Any questions for the planning consultant? I'll reserve my questions till after we hear from the applicant.
Sure.
Is the applicant present?
Move this as such. Okay, well, good evening, Chairman Edmonds, members of the Planning Commission, Planning Director Savadant, and the other members of the staff. I am Michael Palchesko, DTE's Regional Manager, Corporate and Government Affairs for Oakland County. I'm joined by a number of others here at DTE who are available when you do have questions, if they pertain to their specific areas of responsibility or expertise, be able to help out. I would like to introduce a few of those that are here tonight from DTE. Mr. Tom Phillips is our supervising engineer from the Northwest Region Planning Group, which is responsible for the design and engineering of our electrical distribution system here in Troy and the surrounding area of Oakland County. Mr. Mick Blunden is our corporate permit coordinator. Mick's been involved very much in a lot of the day-to-day communications with Brent, city engineer Steve Van Det, and others. Also, Teresa Tran is our project manager from our construction area. And then we have Mark Fairless, supervising engineer from the Central Design Group. He's also an ombudsman. At this time, I'd like to have Mr. Phillips come to the podium and just make a few overall comments about the project, and then we'll respond to questions as they arise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you for us being able to come today and talk to you about aerial substation. In general, aerial substation is what we refer to as a Class A substation. A substation that is fed with two different sources, with two different transformers that connect a common switchgear, similar in a grander scale, of course, but similar to what you have in each home. Breaker panels feeding multiple circuits within your house. This facility will have 9 load-carrying circuits that will feed electrical energy to existing as well as future load growth in the general area, the Troy area as well as Birmingham area. We plan to have it online late 2016, early 2017.
Anything else?
And no, at this point,
Okay.
any questions?
I'm going to entertain the chairman's prerogative. I have some real concerns about this. I've looked at several other substations, one just not more than a mile away at 14 in Coolidge, a consumer substation. But the wall was certainly much more architecturally appealing than a slat wall. I guess my first question is, what color will this be? It looks like it's brown in the picture, but
So I actually have some photos that I brought tonight. I don't know if everyone has seen it. This is the proposed wall. You can pass those around if you like. It's a gray. Yes, it's a great natural gray color, and our plan is to have it two-toned with the columns and the gray being the lighter of the two grays.
well, that's better than at least the architectural rendering that we got in our packet. Are you familiar with the one I'm talking about? It's more like it's a
Troy Station.
yeah, a consumer's choice station.
Well, actually, it is one of our BT facilities.
Oh, is it?
Just south of the Meyer store,
Yeah.
east side of Coolidge.
Correct. That
Right.
is one of our substations, or stations, I should say, and it's the same system. It's the same wall system.
Well, I guess, so you would prefer this over that type of just wall there?
In our opinion, this will blend in better with the transit center and the surrounding area than some of the other options that we looked at.
Okay. Any other questions from the planning commission? Mr. Hudson?
As you know, we had a power outage earlier this year that significantly affected the City Hall complex, and my home is part of that. If this facility is built, will it have the ability then to feed power to that area that was out?
It will have the capability of interconnecting. 100% no, but partial yes. The catastrophic failure that we experienced, you're referring to what we call Apache substation at Livernois and Big Beaver, is a very rare occasion, even though it happened. But yes, this will have interconnections built in for circuits to back up one another.
You said it would work partially. What do you mean partially?
Well, there are natural boundaries and natural limitations as to how far a circuit from any substation can go. So Apache is on the east side of I-75, and this is on the west side, about a mile plus. So circuits more so on the west side of I-75 will have that interconnection capability. So a substation that we refer to as Savage, that is on the north side of Big Beaver, east of the big shopping mall, it'll have capacity capabilities for backups to that facility, as well as some circuits that come from Apache underground.
You have interesting names for your stations.
Yes.
Savage and Apache?
Actually, yeah,
Nomenclature committee that
created those years ago.
Committees do wonders. Any other questions? Mr. Tagle?
Maybe you could give us an overview. Is this substation generating power or just taking power that's there and somehow redirecting it?
So, no, we are not generating power here. As the picture shows, on the far side, the Birmingham side, there are ITC towers. We will be taking power from one of the, there are two lines on those towers. We'll be taking power from one side. It will drop in via other towers and high structures on the Troy side. It'll drop down to a buswork, a avenue for connection. And from there, we will redistribute voltage from, that voltage level is 120,000 volts. We'll redistribute at 13,200, which is typical within the city.
So from that tower to your poles, it'll be an overhead wire over the tracks.
Yes.
But how high in the air is that wire going to be?
I don't have a.
So I was remiss in the introductions. We were joined tonight by Mr. Daryl Poffrick. He's the International Transmission Company Area Manager, Local Government and Community Affairs. He's joined us tonight to help us with our presentation.
So Daryl Poprave, ITC.
Just speak into the microphones, Daryl.
Daryl Poprave, ITC, Local Government Community Affairs, representing our company. So that line is the Troy Wheeler 120 kV or 120,000 volt line. Those two towers that you see on the Birmingham side between, next to the big lattice tower, those are the cut-in towers. Those towers are about 80 foot tall, and they'll go across that line. It meets the requirements of the Grand Trunk Railroad system. Obviously, we can't underground it. That would destabilize the railroad corridor, so it has to go overhead. One thing that needs to be noted, those towers at that cut-in are on the Birmingham side, and those towers will be lit with FAA blinking strobes because they're within 1,600 feet of the airport runway, so as required by federal law.
So the lines won't be coming from the lattice-shaped tower, but from the two poles to the right of that?
Correct.
Okay.
Those lines will come in, and that line will have a break in it, and it will go into the station and out of the station. So
Gotcha.
it'll be a loop system.
Thank you.
I got another question. Is there any trash generated on this site? And how is that handled, if there is?
No, it's essentially an unmanned facility. Our operators come to the substation maybe twice a month just to do some testing of the equipment, monitoring. We do have garbage, just, waste bins in the switchgear building, but we remove that on a routine basis, just no more than what one guy can produce within 2 visits in a given month. Very minor.
And the gate down near the, closer to the transit center, it looks like it's also a 12-foot wall, is it?
Correct, it will match the height of the wall, that is correct. It'll be a motorized sliding gate.
Thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Fred?
What's the material of that gate? What's it made out of?
It's made out of aluminum, louvered material. We can provide some photos of that from another project.
It's just that I've known DTE back in the day with Detroit Edison, and the lovely substation buildings they created with slate roofs, copper gutters, just gorgeous architecture. And I could see we're into a more utilitarian look now.
Yeah.
But I don't know what you could do.
It blends nicely.
Yeah, with the landscaping, are those trees gonna be such that they really cover it up year-round? Are they deciduous or?
It's a mixture, 20 deciduous trees we're adding and 20 evergreens. Total of 40 new trees on the site.
Thanks.
But they're only, how tall? Are they 12-foot tall?
Gordon, do you know off the top of your head?
Deciduous trees that are crab apples, they're flowering crab, they're about 15 max. And evergreen we're using Douglas fir, Colorado blue spruce, and white spruce. Those get to be 60 feet.
No, but how tall when you plant them?
8 to 10 feet.
And the wall's 12.
Yes.
Is it possible to get larger ones? Because I've seen site plans with taller ones when they plant them.
Probably with the evergreens, we could look into getting some taller trees, but the crab
That would
and
be
crab
helpful.
apples would be.
That'd be really helpful,
Right.
'cause that has the most screening effect, really,
Right.
all year long. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, yes, Ms. Cruz, I'm sorry.
You know, it's really more of a concern than a question, and I look at this picture, and I am, tonight, unfortunately, struck by the disconnect for me that I see between the Troy Transit Center and this very utilitarian substation that DTE wants to build. And I ask myself the question, when I look at that transit center, and I think this is where people in Troy are going to go to catch a train to Chicago, or to catch a cab, or to get on a bus and go somewhere, is a substation really what I want to look at when I think about the transit center, and the amount of energy and effort, time, and money that the city has put in making sure that we have a transit center. I mean, I think that when you think about other train stations or mass transit centers in cities throughout the country, the general landscape surrounding these structures don't include utility facilities. So, you know, if someone on the commission can help me sort of understand why we want a substation in front of our transit center, I mean, I would be open to ideas and suggestions. But as I look at this picture, why do I want to go catch the train to Chicago there? Why?
Well, I think you raise a good point, at least in my estimation. I don't think we have a choice. DTE owns this property, am I correct?
That is correct.
It's not under consignment or anything like that.
We own it.
We would like to make a comment about.
Well, one thing that you're not taking away from this rendering, remember that the substation itself will be elevated from Doyle Drive. So really, when you're driving along Doyle Drive, the wall really provides quite a bit of screening at that 12-foot height.
But it's 12 feet and your poles are 70.
Well, that's true, but the towers will remain whether or not the substation's there, meaning the ITC tower's on the other side of the track, so.
And then Mr. Krent just mentioned that in the past you've built facilities that use much nicer quality construction materials. And today you're proposing something that's very industrial and utilitarian.
Well, the wall system that we're proposing has been our standard wall system for quite a few years now. We've used it in Royal Oak at 14 Mile and Coolidge. We've used it in the city of Detroit. We're using it in Ferndale for a new substation. So it has become our standard design.
So because it's the way you've always done it, you can't change it?
Well, that's just our preferred method of screening. It provides a very good level of aesthetics, we think. It also provides enough security to protect our asset.
Mr. Sadler.
I had the same concerns with Ms. Cruz. This perspective is a little misleading. I think the intent of the perspective is to show really what's going on inside this compound in the context of the landscaping and the wall and the transit center, et cetera. So I absolutely understand where Ms. Cruz is coming from. But then I had to remind myself that it is an existing utility corridor with massive high-tension power lines. And really the perspective, I've driven it numerous times with keeping in mind what the perspective is going to be for someone who's entering Doyle Drive and heading south towards the transit center. And with the landscaping and the proximity, the height and the massing of the wall, 12-foot wall, and the fact that it's raised, I believe it's going to do a really effective job of really hiding a lot of this for the visitor going into going onto the property and wanting to take the train. I think that this perspective is probably the one that that they're gonna, this is what you're gonna see more or less when you cross over that bridge. Is if you turn to the, look to the north, you're gonna, see some of the equipment, but, your point's well taken, but I think given the, intensity of the equipment that's here and the, when I first saw the application, I was a little leery about a 12-foot wall. I thought that was gonna be too high, but, it's like name your poison. Do you wanna look at a wall or do you wanna look at the equipment behind the wall? So it's taken together, I got a significantly higher comfort level once I kind of looked at it from that perspective.
Can't we look at a prettier wall?
Well, I think that, my opinion
We don't
only,
like
and
so pretty.
I'm not a voting member, but the photograph that was handed and looked at is a significant improvement over what was shown on
It is.
the plan. I think the plan needs to be updated to reflect that design.
I agree. Mr. Tagle?
Bert, could you go back to the other view? Now, maybe there's a compromise position here. I mean, you've introduced landscaping along the drive, Doyle Drive, but there's no landscaping along the north wall. You've got an 18-foot easement there.
No, it's that we have 10 feet between our property line and the wall on the north side, so it's very limited in terms of landscaping. We also are bringing the water main. We have to reroute the existing water main that goes through the property, so some of that will be in the northeast corner of the property. And generally, we don't like to have landscaping that close to our security perimeter because of issues with that, that may cause.
I'm looking to help you guys here. Now your water main is in the easement?
Correct. There's
And
an
is it-
existing water main easement that goes through the property, so we are rerouting that easement. We're moving it from inside the property to the northeast corner of the property, essentially. It's in the plan set that we see.
Why is that necessary?
Because the water main was cutting right through the middle of the substation where the electrical circuits will be installed.
One other concern I have that I just thought of, I know you probably all know the history of the transit center. And at one point, Birmingham and Troy were in a joint project to do that. Even though they've dropped out at this point, if I were the Birmingham Planning Commission, I would say, there's nothing, why, you're not putting any landscape along the railroad tracks for the people that use the Birmingham side. I think, my own personal feeling, I think you ought to maximize the landscaping around this 12-foot high wall. Deciduous trees can still work. And they're not impeded by a water main. We have a lot of them in Troy right now. And the same
Correct, but
thing
that
along the railroad
10-foot
track.
space is really gonna limit what we can do, I think, with landscaping, with trees, because you're gonna have those trees possibly overgrowing the wall, and that to us is a security issue, with having something there that could be a potential problem.
So you would
That
be
goes to the
opposed to columnar-type deciduous trees?
Yes, I would be.
And if I might add something.
Yes.
From ITC's perspective, on the Birmingham side, where the railroad tracks are, we're actually removing the existing trees that's on your plan. And that's because we have some federal reliability standards. Trees that cut into transmission lines that cause outages are the personal liability of ITC. And so we take a stance, and I'm sure you see that, and everywhere we're not trimming, we cut trees down. That's the only way to get reliable power. You've taken this, we talked about the little outage that you had, excuse me, in ITC's terms, that's a little outage. Because in ITC's terms, if these major lines go out, entire county goes out, especially when we get into the northern region, or large areas go out, and that's usually caused by tree interaction. So we have an absolute no trees under or near our transmission lines. That's our company policy. And that's enforced through we own that corridor, not Detroit Edison. So they don't have the option.
Any further questions for the applicant, Mr. Tagle?
Just want to make sure I'm reading your drawings correctly. It looks like you have some kind of a barrier and a gate perpendicular to your north wall, between your property line and your north wall.
Right, could you
on
go
the-
back to some of those site plan drawings?
Which ones you like?
S-
First one?
The colored one show, the rendered
Colored one?
one, yeah. Oh, that one,
This one?
yep. If you zoom in, if you can, Brent, in the lower right-hand corner,
Down here?
right, yep.
Bear with me here. There?
Right there. What is that?
Well, our wall will be installed 10 foot from the property line. The neighbor to the north, we're installing a new decorative fence along that property line. This gate will allow us access to maintain that strip, to, cut the grass and do whatever we have to do back in that area.
So just point out your wall, your north wall.
This solid black line.
And there's a 12-foot water main easement back there, right? Somewhere between your property line and the wall?
Go back to a couple
12
of prints
inch.
before this.
It's a 12-foot wide water main easement along Doyle, and I suspect it turns west.
I'll just pull it over. There's a note right there.
Go back one more drawing, I think.
This way?
Correct. The existing water main cuts right through the property where our switchgear, where the outgoing circuits need to go. So we're essentially, well, this is good enough. Right now, the water main essentially, for all intents and purposes, comes through here
Right.
and cuts right through where the switchgear building's going. So we're proposing a new easement along the north side of the property that will come down and cross Doyle right here. So we're rerouting the water main, the existing water main.
Is that a city main?
Yes,
So it's a 12-foot easement, according to the drawing.
I believe so, yes.
And I'm sorry, did you say what that gate and fence was made out of?
Chain link. That will just be chain link between us and the neighbor.
And what's is there anything on the property line as far as fencing?
The neighbor's fence.
So it's a chain link fence as well?
Well, it's gonna be ornamental. Is that what we decided on with the neighbor?
Yeah.
So the gate would probably match that ornamental material then.
So ornamental, tell me what you mean by ornamental.
Wrought iron look, you know.
Okay.
Right.
Like a powdered metal finish? then?
Correct, powdered metal.
Well, I understand that you can't have trees, grow above the 12-foot wall, but there are a lot of trees and shrubs, gentlemen, that could go in there beyond that point where you don't have a water main. So I think something as utilitarian as this is, you ought to use every opportunity to try to landscape it. Even there, I'm a gardener. I know you can get low-growing shrubs that you won't have to cut off in even 20 years. I have a paperbark maple in my yard. I've had there for 30 years, and it's still not higher than 12 feet. So I think you need to go back to the drawing board on the
Well, we may be
landscape.
able to put in some arborvitaes or something that is definitely low growing. And again, per ITC, that would only be along the north property line. Assuming we can fit something in there that would,
Do you have a landscape architect?
yes, we can work with
Well,
some.
I would sure shoot them away from arborvitae. They really dry out in the winter and look actually worse. But there are a wide variety. Even perennial grasses would look better than some of those. And they don't get over 12 feet tall. Ms. Cruz?
I just want to make sure that I'm clear here, and that is DTE owns this property, right? So, our options here with what we might be able to ask for are quite limited. And we're not in the business of defining pretty. but utilitarian seems to be agreed upon. Ms. Dufresne, is there any legal reason a person could say no?
Ms. Cruz, I'd have to say not under the circumstances.
Thank you.
However, Mr. Sabat, I'm sorry.
Just think it out loud. Does this wall have to be located here? Could it be shifted to the south a little bit to allow enough room for some shrubs or trees?
It really is there to maximize the space inside the substation to allow the clearances we need between the electrical equipment. So it's about where it needs to go. Is there a little wiggle room? Perhaps. Not much.
So that's a yes or no?
No,
It's a no?
it's a no.
Well, then I might be a no. Go ahead. Anything else? I don't have a problem approving this if we can put some conditions in that there will be landscaping, whatever will meet your standards on this north easement here, and also along the railroad track. You could put grasses in there, even, something to screen this substation that you all probably agree is not an attractive. And I understand you have to provide the power, but I don't think you've gone as far as you can go in terms of doing that, so. Yeah, Mr. Grant.
You know, as far as security, I can see that you have to have that clear space for security reasons.
Correct.
I take it there's gonna be cameras, other sensors that'll prevent people from scaling that 12-foot wall?
There are plans to install some cameras and so forth, yes.
Because, you know, you could put some kind of ivy or something growing on that, but then again, that's a way for people to climb the wall. Plus, it may damage depending on the concrete, eventually scale off. But I'm just trying to find a way to green it up a bit and still keep security high.
Again, I think we could entertain putting some small shrubs or some plantings along that north property line. Maybe some ornamental grasses or something like that.
How about along the tracks?
Along the tracks, again, it would have to be something very low. I think ITC would work with us on
That's really
ornamental
all-
type
that's
grasses
really all
or
we're
something
asking
like
for.
that. I think we could do that.
No more than 3 feet high ever,
So you're talking ornamental type.
3 foot.
or else it'll get mowed by us. We have the legal right to do it on Point View. That's across the street is a bus garage right now in Birmingham. In Birmingham, we did talk in Birmingham, they have no issue with this. Talk to the city manager himself.
The planning commission?
City manager.
Mr. Sabat.
So, obviously I don't vote. I'm just trying to move this along.
Thank you.
So I heard the planning commission, those that spoke, say that essentially they understand the need for this. There really wasn't as much pushback on the height of the wall as I expected. The DTE's come forward with a better design than what was shown on the plan, and everyone who's spoken agrees with that. And I'm hearing the planning commission suggest that certainly along the northern property line, perhaps could be enhanced with some, not even some trees, but some shrubs to improve the appearance. And I kind of sort of hear DTE say maybe, kind of maybe, they could, so to move this forward, can you put shrubs along the northern property line or not? Yes or no?
I don't think that's an issue,
Okay.
definitely. If it's something small that, that's manageable, ornamental type grass or bush,
Okay.
I don't think we would have an issue with that.
So we've got some plant material along the north to help to soften that, and we can have some low-lying shrubs along the tracks, no more than 3 feet in height.
Okay. Someone want to make that a condition of the motion to approve? proposed resolution is on page 27 in our packet.
Getting there.
Can I ask a question? I see, they're trying to determine what the surface area is of the transformer area. Is that just a crushed stone or a rock?
Correct, our typical yard surface is just a crushed stone. This drawing was actually submitted for runoff calculation purposes that went to the engineer. So each one of these just delineates a different yard surface, so. Again, the interior of the yard is all crushed stone, less the concrete piers that the equipment will sit on. The drive approach will be concrete. The portion of the drive from the approach to the gate will be asphalt, and then the remainder of the property inside is.
So everything drains to the catch basins in the?
Correct, and then it falls to the detention pond that is owned by Public Storage to the north, correct. The city engineer has looked at that.
The city engineer approved the surface, given the low amount of visits per month.
Correct, we're actually decreasing the amount of runoff because of the surface.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I can talk.
You can try, we'll amend it.
All right. Resolved that preliminary site plan approval pursuant to Article 8 of the zoning ordinance as requested for the proposed DTE aerial substation located south of Maple, east of Doyle, parcel 88-20-31-226-029, section 31, within the IB Integrated Industrial and Business District be granted subject to the following. The following being that along the north side of the property, there's a continuous there's a continuous stretch of greenery that is within the allowable, the upper limits of the height restrictions from our, whatever government agency that restricts your height, and along the railroad track, again, within the limits of ITC's requirements. That's about it. Anybody else?
Yes, Mr. Seven.
Could we add that the wall detail shall match the details that were circulated?
Oh, yes.
So one issue with that, the software, I think you're talking about the 3D rendering, is that correct, when you're saying that it didn't match the photos? The 3D rendering software that we utilize is somewhat limited in terms of what it can show. That's why we're supplementing what we submitted with.
Well, I think we should reference what you passed
Sure,
out.
I think Nick sent these on, I mean, we can get you these photos, no problem.
And how about the gates? Is there anything you can do within chain link fence or iron gates that can
Can we prohibit the use of chain link fence? They've already offered
powdered metal?
powdered metal.
Yeah, the original submittal, at the time we were working with the neighbor, it was proposed to be chain link, but we have since gone with the wrought iron look powder coat finish. So the gates that we're installing will match that. That was, I missed.
On both ends?
On both ends.
Do we need that to be put into the resolution?
Yes.
Okay, and that the fencing visible to the public shall be made out of, shall be not chain link fence, some decorative ornamental type fencing with a very durable finish on it.
Is there a second to the resolution? Mr. Sanzika, thank you. Any further discussion by the planning commission?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
I'm a little disturbed by the blackmail attempt we're making on this resolution. The petitioner has an absolute right for approval of the plans as submitted. It conforms to all the ordinances, the regulations, and I think that we're doing ourselves a disservice if we're going to ignore that principle and insist on something which is, in my opinion, not enforceable. I'm going to vote no.
Anyone else? Ms. Zarnicki, the roll call, please.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
No.
Mr. Krant?
Yes.
Ms. Koopa?
Yes.
Mr. Zanzika? Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Abahedian?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes, under protest.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, and thank you for making the agenda adjustment.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is preliminary site plan review, file number SP 1010, proposed Bradley Square condominiums, east side of Rochester, between Bradley and Shallowdale, section 14, currently zoned RT, one family attached residential, and R1C, one family residential districts.
Yes, good evening. I'll be doing this report as well. The application before us tonight is on behalf of the Robertson Brothers, who has done numerous homes and development in this community. They're seeking approval of a 31-unit condominium development. The site is located on Rochester Road, east side of Rochester Road. We do know that 30 of the 31 units are attached and accessed off of Bradley. One unit is a detached single-family home that's located along Shallowdale to be consistent with the Shallowdale street elevations. The site is currently 4 parcels. The 3 northern parcels are zoned RT, one family attached. And the southernmost parcel is split zoning with RT on the northern part of that and R1C on the southern half that's adjacent to Shallowdale. The RT portion, as noted, will be 30 units and will be developed in 3 and 4 unit building clusters. The southern portion, which is R1C, will be a single-family home. The attached single-family and the detached are permitted uses in their appropriate zoning districts. In regards to arrangement and access, all of the attached units will be accessed off a new private drive or driveway or road, which is accessed off of Bradley. There is not going to be a curb. There are two existing curb cuts on Rochester Road. Those will be closed, and there will be no new curb cut or no curb cut at all on Rochester. The development is served with a one-way circulation drive. My pointer doesn't work here very well. One-way circulation drive around this way. This is approximately 20 feet in width to accommodate that. These are also supplemented with some we call canoe guest parking spaces along the eastern end of that circular drive.
And just to clarify, their engineer put a turning template on for emergency vehicles that showed that this works, so.
Fire department's okay with that?
Fire department reviewed it and is okay with the design. In initial meetings with the applicant, we did discuss site arrangement and layout, gave them some suggestions to consider. One of these suggestions was actually fronting more buildings on Rochester Road to kind of close off that street wall on Rochester. The applicant did go back and consider a rearrangement of the site. However, they do not wish at this time to amend their site plan as submitted. They do note that they don't want to put more houses on Rochester Road or closer to Rochester Road due to the high traffic volume of Rochester, as well as the intended target market for these homes prefer a more east-facing type of housing product. In regards to bulk and setbacks, the applicant does meet all the required setback height and bulk regulations for both the R1C and RT. The applicant, in addition to 2 parking spaces per unit, are also adding 23 guest parking spaces. Most of these are arranged around the circular driveway. However, there are some that are located adjacent to the stormwater retention area. We do note the applicant is required to provide 94 trees on site. They are providing 129 trees. However, we do note that the required locations of those trees, specifically a buffering along the northern property line, the eastern property line and along Rochester Road, they're deficient in terms of the number along those 2 buffers. However, they do exceed the total amount of trees by over 30 trees. This change in location or variant of location of trees can be varied by the Planning Commission if it deems the landscape plan is sufficient as submitted. This will have to be a consideration of the Planning Commission. In regards to stormwater, the applicant is proposing a stormwater in the corner of the existing site along Rochester Road. We have expressed a concern about this and asked the applicant to consider alternatives in stormwater best management practices for the site. This includes consideration of bioswales in the guest parking islands, bioswales against the single-family properties to the east, and a bioswale along Rochester Road, in addition to potentially pervious pavement and/or strategically placed rain gardens. The applicant will be here tonight to comment on those suggestions. Lastly, the applicant has submitted sample floor plans and elevations. It should be noted that there was a code requirement in the RT district that there be variance in appearance of the elevations. We asked the planning commission should consider the elevations and determine if they do meet that varying requirement that's set forth in the ordinance. We also do note that the rear facing elevation, which is this garage facing elevation, will be highly visible from Rochester Road, specifically in the area that backs up to the stormwater detention facility. We have noted that we are asking for additional architectural treatment or softening of that, specifically the garage features of that, to create a more nicer appearance, for lack of a better term, for those elevations on Rochester Road. Lastly, the applicant did not indicate material use on their elevations, so we have asked them to bring in material samples for the planning commission to consider. And we have noted that the planning commission has requested recently that perspectives or renderings or models be provided to the planning commission to understand the context of the development and relationship to surrounding properties. We've asked for those along Rochester Road. The applicant has noted they've been asked to bring it to tonight's meeting. So in summary, we support the development of this property. We support alternative housing options in Troy. This is an alternative housing option that we're looking for more of this type of product in Troy. The project does meet all area and bulk regulations. However, we do ask that the planning commission to consider the proposed site arrangements, the elevations, and the stormwater feature to give direction to the applicant in proceeding with the application. Thank you.
Any questions for the planning consultant? Mr. Tagle?
How many trees deficient are they along the west and east property lines?
I'll look it up for you 1 second. Brent, can you turn the landscape plan? So along Livernois, Rochester, they're required along this length to provide 41 trees. They are currently providing 22 trees, so they're deficient in about 19 trees. Along the eastern property line, I get reoriented by how it's, along the eastern property line, they are required to plant 44 trees, and I believe they have 23 trees, so they're deficient in 21 trees in that location.
Thank you. Any other questions for the planning consultant? Ms. Koopa?
Do you know what the east-facing target market, what is?
This is just information provided us from the applicant. They're here to address that.
Mr. Sanziga?
Yeah, did you review the tree survey? I'm curious how that would compare to the proposed woodland ordinance.
You know, I did at one point do the review and actually had the numbers, but I didn't put it in my report, and I don't remember what it was. I can provide that to you.
I'm curious.
I was out there today, and there are not a huge number of trees on this, and the condition of most of those trees, I think it was even evident from the survey that's in the report. They're pretty scrub trees, so I don't know how many could be saved, but that's something we can ask the applicant.
Or relocated, or?
I will note that they, while the location of the required trees are deficient from what the ordinance requires, the total number is greatly exceeding the minimum requirement. So I think even if there was some tree mitigation required to the site, I think they would greatly meet that with the number of trees that they're in excess of what the ordinance requires, so.
For the woodland ordinance, yes.
For the woodland ordinance. I wasn't necessarily concerned with the amount of tree loss on the site.
And to be clear, there's gonna be significantly more trees on this, if it's developed like this.
Yeah.
Significantly more trees than exist today, I believe.
But they're putting them on the inside of the development for the use of the residents and not considering the people who drive, the 100,000 people who drive by this every day. So that's just my comment. Okay, anything else? Is the applicant present?
Yes. Sorry about that. If I could ask you to pass these down, please. Justin.
I'm assuming you've signed in already?
Yes, we did that. So good evening, I am Tim Loughlin. I am the Land Acquisition Director for Robertson Brothers Homes, 6905 Telegraph Road, Suite 200, Mill Hills. Tonight with me, I have Paul Robertson, the owner of Robertson, and knowing Paul as I do, he's available for any color commentary, so keep that in mind. For those of you who are unaware, Robertson Homes is a family-owned and professionally run builder that has a successful track record of building quality communities spanning 7 decades. In fact, just sitting over here, Paul reminded me that one of our first developments was the Pine Hill development at Adams and Waddles in 1950. So that kind of shows you the staying power we've had, and we plan on continuing much longer. So I want to thank you for the opportunity for us to be able to present our proposed Bradley Square attached single-family townhome development on Rochester Road between Waddles and Long Lake. We've been working with staff over the past several months to arrive at what we consider a very well-conceived plan for a vacant property. Our plan for the site proposes 30 for-sale attached single-family townhome units that are designed to meet the existing RT zoning district. Square footage will be approximately 1,500 square feet and in either a 2 or 3 bedroom configuration. Prices will be in the low to mid 200s. There is, as Ben had pointed out, there's a single family lot which meets the R1C development standards, which will be carved out along Shallowdale in order to fit in better with the current development along that street. As you know, Robertson built the Kilmer Place development just off of Big Beaver next to the Bahama Breeze restaurant. It's a very successful project for us, and it's really indicative of the quality of our attached developments. So if I could direct you to the site plan, in fact, Brent, if you wouldn't mind putting on the landscape plan, I think I might.
The landscape plan out there?
Please, yes. So due to the velocity of traffic on Rochester, we intend to utilize Bradley Street for a main access. We've worked with fire safety, as mentioned in the staff report, to meet all of the code requirements for ingress and egress for the property. Each unit will contain 2 parking spaces and a covered garage, along with 23 guest parking spaces. The staff report did call out that some of those spaces do not meet the minimum width of 9.5 feet. We have no problem with amending that for the final engineering plan submittal. There are ample pedestrian connections throughout the property and very generous landscaping, as the staff report has pointed out. So staff had asked us to review the layout in regard to the number of homes fronting along Rochester Road, as you had just discussed. It is our view that these units offer less to home buyers due to the volume and noise from street traffic. I will show you, actually in the perspective you can see, that's kind of the view from the northwest looking to the southeast. And you can see kind of how this will live. In fact, some of those units there have what we are offering as an optional patio. So this really is their livable space. So, you know, we kind of, when we looked at this many different ways, now this is probably site plan 13. And, you know, we felt that minimizing that in respect of having that as a livable outdoor space, those east-facing lots just have a better, you know, feel rather than having a large arterial street. So that's one of the reasons for that. Additionally, the grade of the site dictates that there would be retention on the Rochester Road side to tie into the existing drainage structures in the road right-of-way. Staff had also asked us to look into the use of naturalized stormwater management techniques. So we did consult with our professionals. It'd be very challenging to meet many of these techniques. Our soil is predominantly silty clay, which does not lend itself very well to pervious paving. Additionally, we believe the site is designed in such a way with tree placement that employing bioswales in most areas would impact the ability to do a lot of the screening and buffering that we intend to do. So after careful consideration, we're not proposing to provide any BMPs for stormwater management. So if I can move to the elevations, which you have a perspective of, there's also in your packet, it is. They're very similar to what we did at Kilmer Place, though this is a split grade product. So what that means is the rear of the units are 1/2 grade lower than the front. This has the effect of reducing the scale of the front of the units. And you can see in the perspective, you know, compared to Kilmer, that really has more of a low slung look to it. It not only shows, this perspective not only shows how the units meet the provisions of section 4.07, which is in the staff report for facade variation. Each one of those units has a different elevation, if you will. Plus, we would have the optional patio on some of those, which would further break it out. But that perspective also shows how well the landscape development will be. Staff had made a comment regarding the view of the rear of units 14 through 19. I think it's important to know that those units, 14 through 19, again, there's only about 5 or 6 of them. You can go back to the landscape plan, please, Brian. So you can see those are on, it's on the very eastern portion, which is up at the top on this. Those are set back more than 220 feet from the curb. They're very well, I mean, they're set back very far, and on top of that, you can see all the evergreens that are planted around the retention basin there that are really they're really blocking the view from Rochester. I would say that you're not going to be able to see that from the road with those trees there. And by the way, those evergreens, I know those aren't counted in the Rochester Road, but that's one of the reasons why we're deficient on Rochester Road. Those evergreens really are acting as a buffer from the road as well. They're just basically surrounding the retention area. So we feel there would be no negative impact from users of Rochester Road because of that. All of the exterior building materials are maintenance-free, and which are generally always in good appearance. In fact, I brought a material sample board, very similar to the types of materials we used at Kilmer. You can see on the perspective there is a two-tone paint, or not two-tone vinyl, and also you've got the brick color there. So it does break it up. You can see how we kind of undulated that up and down with the brick. As the staff report points out, we're meeting all the development standards of the existing RT zoning district, and we've worked with staff on screening and landscaping. We're very excited to bring this development to the city and believe it'll be successful for all the stakeholders involved, and that it'll be a reuse of a vacant and underutilized site. It'll be an economic benefit in terms of taxes. It'll meet a housing demand, as our research indicates, a deficit in the number of new for-sale townhouse-style type of development in the city. It'll provide high-quality architectural and landscape design. It'll promote a walkable and sustainable development pattern, and it'll promote pride in ownership in owner-occupied housing. So I'm available for questions. Paul is available for color commentary. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Mr. Cruz.
Would you agree that real estate between Waddles and Long Lake on Rochester Road would be considered prime real estate for the city of Troy?
I'd consider it prime real estate for this type of development, more of a higher density. I think that it kind of has lended itself to this type of development. Certainly, I mean, Big Beaver's a very prime location. Honestly, we consider all of Troy to be prime real estate. I don't know if that's getting to.
So then, can you help me understand why being deficient in 40 trees along that main corridor on Rochester Road is beneficial to the city?
Well, again, as I pointed out, it's not deficient as many as was pointed out because of the surrounding the retention area, which really does act as a buffer from the road. These, we do feel, and you can see from the perspectives, we feel like it is very generously landscaped. That is important to us. We also feel that it's, from our standpoint, these are houses we have to sell, and we wouldn't put sparse landscaping out there because we are concerned about Rochester Road. So I know there are requirements. I also know that our landscape designer he's one of the best, and this is the design that we have.
So you would agree then that the ordinance does require 41 trees for the Livernois screening, and you're proposing 22?
We're proposing 22 if you do not count the retention area.
Rochester Road.
Oh, I'm sorry, Rochester
Yes,
Road.
Rochester.
Right. And then with respect to your stormwater detention, challenging is the reason that you find you can't entertain more environmentally friendly ways to deal with stormwater management?
I'm not an expert in stormwater management, but I do know of the term greenwashing, and when we see the types of soils that are out here, I went to my professionals and I'd asked them specifically to go over this. Mind you, we got this last week, and I sat down with them to go over these comments, because I agree. I mean, I don't want to say that it's not an important thing to do. I also don't want to do something that just makes us feel good for doing it and doesn't actually have any real value. So, I mean, we can look at certain things, but I think it's pretty, just looking at the existing conditions, the fact this is more of an urban type of product, it's not really something you see with wild grasses. Typically, in this type of development, this is the design that we were going for, yes.
So does urban in your mind translate to utilitarian?
No,
No.
I don't think this is utilitarian.
Contemporary?
Neo-traditional?
Okay.
Mr. Hudson.
Looking at your layout to the east,
Yes.
it looks like those units, the rear is facing to the east.
The units on the east, the rear is facing inward, almost
To the west.
facing to the west. All of the garages would face to the interior
Now, let me
of the
see, on
property.
Rochester, it looks like the units are facing Rochester.
The front of the units, yes.
That's right. On the, I presume it's the east side,
Yes.
are the entrances on the easternmost side or on the interior?
The front doors are facing to the east.
What's beyond your lot line there?
Those are backyards of the neighboring.
All right, there are homes back there with backyards.
There are, and you can see them on the perspective, that's why we had done that.
I was looking and I didn't
Yeah.
quite see it, but.
So you can see the homes on the left side, which is the north side, and we're not right up against those, but you can see, yes, we're, you know, it's a beautiful open field. We designed it to face east.
Is that wet or is it a floodplain? It's one or the other, I can't remember. It's either wetlands or floodplain. Quite a bit of the backyards of those houses.
Okay, so they can't use the front except they walk out there? All the entrances are in the rear, on the eastern side?
They are on the eastern side, yeah, that is the front of the units. And that's a good point. So there would also be obviously the option for the patios for those units. So, you know, we just feel like that's a nice environment on the eastern perimeter.
Their outdoor living space, this is the first townhouses we've ever done that have outdoor living spaces. So these have outdoor living spaces by the front door. So if you look in your perspective, and you can see, you see the hedges? See the hedges that show?
Yep.
Those are outdoor living spaces. We've never been able to do that in a townhouse project before. Your ordinance gave us so much room that that we were able to do that. So we pulled the units in, put our negative rear entry to look at each other, and gave you the pretty look on every single outside direction. That was the whole idea here. So all the prettiness on our units, without the garage doors and the cars, all look to all your neighbors. They look to your people on Rochester Road, they look to the people on Bradley, and they look to the backyards of all the single-family houses to the east. That's why we did the plan this way. I think it's a great advantage for the city, but it's also a nice advantage for us because those people along the east side have a wonderful view of this outside open space, which, if I remember the plan, it's either wet or it's in the floodplain. I think it's in the floodplain. It can't be built on anyways, and it's going to be a great open space for all those 20-some units that view to the east.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I'd like to have my front yard and
Yeah,
facing somebody's backyard. But I guess it's a matter of personal taste.
That was my concern. Mr. Tagle?
I have to tell you, your perspective didn't help your case very much for me. You've shown us a view that we would never see, but what it does, it really draws more attention, or at least a lot of attention, to the plainness of the back of these units. There's no color differentiation, there's no massing differentiation. I mean, these are definitely one-sided units and are treating the other three sides as back sides. Personally, if you'd have shown us some views that were more down at eye level, that may have helped your argument about we've got a lot of landscaping or that the front buildings will block the back buildings. However, coming north on Rochester Road, this one unit, let's see what the numbers are here. 1, 2, 3, and 4 I think is going to be a very prominent view for traffic heading north. And honestly, this is like two different buildings. And I really think you need to consider doing something to the back of those the flat backs of those buildings to, you know, and I don't want to say a lot or a little, but just something. They almost look like row houses.
Again, we could certainly add some more landscapers, I can see
No,
that.
you're missing my point. It's not the landscaping I'm talking about. It's the shapes of the building, the colors back there. I mean, look at your front elevation and look at your back elevation. I mean, it's to me, they're treated as though nobody's gonna see the back. And that's not true, whether it's your own, of the people that buy these units, or whether it's the 100,000 people that drive up and down Rochester Road. It just falls really, really short for me. I mean, one pitched roof along the back, and you have dormers on the front, I mean.
So what, obviously, you know, we have to have a price point here, and we think that we're in a good price point. And I think we did dress up the front elevations. Now, you know, we could have dressed those down and concentrated a bit more on the back. But, you know, when I look at the back of these, there's really not that much you can do. You've got the garages, I mean, they're 20-foot wide, and then that second story, you know, you've got a nice outdoor, you know, banister area, and then it's all glass, it's all fenestration. That is really what sells these units. I don't know if anybody walked through Kilmer, but that is what sells these units, basically that view out there, and you can see it's because of all the glass. So I think that, I know that you're concentrating on that, and I understand it. You know, I also think that there's $450,000 homes with just as mundane looking backs. So, you know, typically the front is where everybody concentrates on the design, and I could probably point to a lot of, you know, homes that are twice this that have, you know, the same sort of condition.
Well, tonight we're talking about your project. And it just doesn't cut it for me. I mean, you know, I mean, you're talking about that selling the people that are gonna buy this, because you've got a deck with sliding glass doors on it. I mean, they're gonna look out on a parking lot, and they're gonna look across the way to see the back of another building. And like I said, the units 1 through 4, they're gonna stare, people driving up and down Rochester are gonna see that.
And be deficient by trees.
I mean, it's just, you know, I understand you have a price point, but the things we're talking about here don't have to be expensive.
So again, we've built very similar type of products. Kilmer looks very similar. We haven't experienced any issues with people objecting because of the view from the back.
Thank you.
Ms. Cooper?
I had asked earlier, Mr. Carlisle, but I'm gonna ask you.
Sure.
What is your target market that desires east-facing homes?
You know, I don't think I would, I put it in those terms. When we built Kilmer Place, those were our most popular units that were sold. You know, what our target market is really the young urban professionals. We're looking at people, maybe single mothers, single fathers, that type of buyer. So I think what Ben might be alluding to is, you know, we had discussed, we had a premium on these facing lots in Kilmer, so there is a contingency out there that desires that.
There was a big push with the buyers at Kilmer Place. I don't know it and I don't understand it, but you know what, I tell my guys, you know what, we have a very simple marketing philosophy.
Sir, you're gonna have to, if you're gonna speak, you need to speak in the microphone.
I'm sure the microphone can hear me from over there. At least that's what my guys tell me. Paul Robertson, sorry.
It's because of the tapes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Our people watching at home.
You know, we have a very simple marketing philosophy at Robertson Brothers. You know, it's started by my dad in 1945. Okay, you find out what people want, and you give it to them. And we got the request over and over and over and over again in Kilmer for east facing. Don't ask me. I don't know. I don't understand what it was and why it was, but it was a very, very important to certain ethnic groups.
Any other questions by the planning commission? Mr. Faison.
I had a question for Mr. Carlisle on the storm water detention, are these suggestions? Purely suggestions, or any of these
Yes,
requirements?
we do not have an ORF requirement that requires best management practices. And obviously, the engineering will review the stormwater in terms of volume and calculations, all that. But no, there's no requirement to do best management practices. It is a stated goal.
Right.
Of the planning commission and the master plan in the city, but it's not a requirement.
And then the follow-up question is, have we seen other projects incorporate some of these recommendations?
Yes,
Or-
we have, and in fact, the same developer included best management practices in a similar project that they've referenced multiple times, which is the Kilmer Place PUD, which is the housing, the retail, the residential portion of the development behind the Tim Hortons.
Right.
Right. Yeah, yes.
So they had the stormwater management.
They've incorporated some best management practices in that project.
We have some pervious paving.
There's a rain garden or bioswale.
A little small little rain garden, kind of the common area, and then it's pervious parking. I think maybe 2 or 3 spaces. Smaller site. I mean, obviously, it had a better soil condition that would allow that.
So different soil conditions at the site where you
Right.
did incorporate some of these.
And I don't know offhand what Kilmer was, but here, silty clay, it's just not really conducive to it.
Well, in fact, if I may, I think you do have to look at the soil conditions. I do think, what I'm happy to see is that there are a number of trees, because each tree, you can evaporate 100 gallons per day of water for each tree. So we may not be getting the infiltration, but you're getting the added effect of the exfiltration from the trees. And so, you have to look at the site conditions. You have to take all those into account. And all in all, I'm pleased to see the number of trees that you're planting, and that you're doing a nice landscape.
I appreciate that, and that is important to us. Obviously, we want to create a livable environment. So I know I've been taking kind of some slings and arrows here for the frontage specifically, but I do feel that our placement of the trees overall, this is more than we have to do, and I think that needs to be an important part. And the BMPs are not a requirement. I certainly didn't see it on the project before us, which is a completely different project. I understand that, but I think all in all, this is a very attractive site. I think it's something we can be proud of, and I think it's a use that's really needed here. And we came in here with a lot more density. When we first looked at this, we were going to go for a rezoning. And I think at the end of the day, working with Ben and Brent, we felt that the existing zoning, even though this is a very low density for this type of product for us, the landscaping in and of itself is going to be more money than we spent on any other townhouse development because there's so much of it. But we felt it was important to stay within the current zoning district, which is RT, which is what I think the city wants to see here. So, there's a lot of things that go on in the background before we stand in front of you, and I'm proud of what we've done.
Ms. Cruz?
Is there a reason why you can't meet the ordinance requirements along Rochester Road, even though you're planting more trees than are required?
Be honest, if it's that important to the commission, I think we can look at adding some more trees. It's not that we're tree ogres and we're just don't want to shell out a little more money to have some more trees on Rochester to meet the requirement. Again, I do want to point out that around the retention basin is, to me, screening along Rochester, so I think that should be included in the calculation. But we can certainly look at that, and if that's a matter of not getting not getting the commission support and getting the commission support, we would be willing to certainly look at that a lot more.
And what can you do about the architecture?
So the architecture, we do have multiple colors on the vinyl siding. We can look at maybe alternating some of those colors on the back. We haven't done it before, and I don't know exactly some other architect and how that would work, but that would maybe create some visual interest there on the rear of the. Maybe it's one color on the first floor, maybe the second floor, and the third is a different color. We could certainly do that.
Well, if everybody else is done, Mr. Kraft, sorry.
Couple quick comments. First of all, I want to dovetail on what Mr. Tagle said about the back of these buildings. They are visible, especially the one that he pointed out on the side, that's coming north on Rochester, that's like, hits you like a sign. And I don't, you know, no matter what kind of trees you put in, it's still gonna look like the back end of a building. It just doesn't look, you know, it has more frontage on Rochester than, you know, the frontage you won't see. I mean, it's the back of the building. Especially that building, it's got, I would like to see something, not just color, because you know, it looks like a patch quilt. It's, you know, you just stuck colors on a flat surface. I would really like to see some kind of architectural relief, some kind of a movement. You know, you've got great movement on the fronts, you know, ins and outs and different details. And the back is just so plain Jane. It just, you know, it screams garage, like reminds me of a storage unit. It just doesn't look like a house. The front, although it's, you know, you've got some variation in each unit, each cluster of three, it's just rubber stamped down the line. There's no variation down the line. I'd like to see just rearrangement of the elements you have, so it doesn't look like he's just cookie cutter, you know, stamped them all out on Rochester Road. The other thing about the fronts is you've got one very prominent entrance with columns. The other, and I guess maybe it's price points. That's the guy with the columns gets, you know, has to pay another $5,000. But the other one look like side doors to me. They just have no feeling of welcome home. They just look side door.
With the shed roof.
Yeah, yeah, with the shed roof. And then that element, what I really like, that outdoor patio in the front, what the guy in the middle gets at, or the guy on the other unit gets it on the side. I mean, you know, what about the other guys? they get, you know,
No,
just.
it would be everybody.
Everybody
Anybody
gets it, it's an option.
Oh,
You
it's
can
an
access
option.
it from the.
Everybody can
walkway.
have one.
Got it. All right, well, that's good
Okay?
to know.
Everybody can have one.
Okay.
And if I can just speak, just because I don't want to lose a thought about,
Sure.
You're right, and I agree with you completely on the shed type of look there. I think really the point of that was, and again, I'm not an architect, but I think the point of that was just so it wasn't the same, you know, post over and over again. And I think Kilmer does have that to some degree, and we are trying to break it up and make it a little bit different. Now, did we hit a home run on that exact look? I don't know, but I think that was really the intent, is so it would break it up on the entrance.
The ordinance, as we have it, it's set forth in RT district requirements. It does say for one-family detached residential dwellings. These aren't one-family detached. Are they? How does that?
It was a typo. It's one family attached.
Oh, okay. Okay, so then this does apply. And in that case, since it does apply, the dwelling front elevation shall not reoccur in the same or subsequent similar structural form on other dwelling within the same street frontage without there being at least one other dwelling with a different elevation between the dwellings that repeat the frontage. Yeah, well, I know, technically, yeah, there are three dwellings. So the one in the middle is different, but that same one is repeated on every one in the middle. I mean, it just.
So you're really talking about the arrangement, not
Yeah.
necessarily that what we're showing is inappropriate, just that it's the repeating pattern.
Yes, it's just, yeah, exactly.
I know at a minimum, we can, you know, it says A, B, C, D. I know we can switch to D, C, D, A. So, I mean, I think we certainly would be willing to do that, because I agree, I think that I had looked at, especially when you see the perspective, that really jumps out at you.
And just to
And the
read.
color changes. You can also do color changes too, to do the same, do a similar thing by changing colors.
Yeah, color
Different
change.
elevation, the same elevation, different colors.
Yeah, that may be helpful too. But again.
And I don't think we've thought our way through every single one of
Oh,
them.
yeah, we're picking it apart because.
It's a new product, it's
Yeah.
because it's halfway up in the front, so it's not so domineering to the street. So we've got different elevations and different stuff, and we don't have every building design. We're in preliminary.
And again, I think your buyers would be more pleased, and, you know, not to say you can't sell these, but I think we'll add without a lot of expense, it'll add visual value very quickly.
Our buyers are pleased because they're gonna get a $250,000 product in Troy they can't get anywhere else. That's what our buyers are gonna be pleased about.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hudson?
I want to emphasize what Mr. Tagle and Mr. Kern have said. I don't think you're close to satisfying the ordinance requirements regarding reoccurring and substantially similar residences. You can mix it up, but it's just a hodgepodge, and I'm in danger of saying you haven't met it, and I'm not in favor of this project. You've got a redevelopment redevelop your elevations, make them attractive, and you might get my vote on this one. It's a good project, but I think it needs a lot more work, and I'd suggest that you go back to the drawing board and come back to different elevations and probably even different perspectives of the exhibit you left with us tonight.
I would concur with all three of those. Those comments are for. And I'm not willing to give up on the required trees along Rochester Road. That's a requirement in our ordinance. And I applaud you for doing all the extra trees inside the development, but those are for the enjoyment of the owners. You need to keep in mind, we're representing all the citizens of Troy, not just the owners in this project. Mr. Senti.
Yeah, I'm just curious, is there any consideration for a meeting place on the site for the residents? For example, is there a picnic area or a gazebo or some type of site where the people can congregate and enjoy the outdoors?
There is that central area, yes, it's between 10 and 11. We hadn't considered any amenities. It's only 30 units, which we obviously built larger developments, and we've included those types of amenities. We felt, with the overall landscaping, that's kind of an overall amenity. We've got a lot of walking paths. That's sort of where our direction was headed.
That's where there's actually access out to Rochester Road too.
Correct.
So that would be an ideal place for some type of a community park type area. Because in all honesty, those do you really think they're gonna require all that many parking spaces in this development?
Oh, yeah.
Even the visitors? You got 2 in the driveway and 1 in the garage. So
Well,
that's,
there's two in the garage, and then the rest just gets parked.
We'd love to cut down parking spaces, they only attract third cars.
Yeah, there'll be no
Their
overnight
problem.
parking there.
There'll be no overnight parking in any of those parking spaces.
well, I don't know what the rest of the planning commission feels, but I think this is not ready for approval at this point. I suggest that we postpone this project until, I'm sorry.
Can I ask a question just to assist the applicant in coming back before the planning commission? Sounds like the 2 major issues that were discussed were the elevation, the architectural style and details, and landscaping, specifically that along Rochester Road. Is the planning commission, just so the applicant knows in terms of site layout, or is the planning commission comfortable with the site layout and moving forward and having the applicant come back and just address those 2 issues?
Well, I would agree with Mr. Tagle. I'm sure those orphan units on the north side need some work.
In terms of layout or the design of the backside of the building?
Well, I don't know if you can put enough makeup on that to avoid the problem. Maybe it's better to cut them out and put your community meeting place there, but I still think that's an eyesore, a potential eyesore.
I would like to point out, obviously we read through all of your ordinances and we take that into consideration as we do our development. We did see that provision, and it does say detached units, and you do allow detached units in your RT zoning district. I did not feel when we were going through this process that would be an issue. And I do feel that we do have nice elevations that do break it up. Personally, from that standpoint, we meet our zoning ordinances when we go into city. So I'd like to have just, I don't know if it's a legal clarification of that or not, but I want to point out that we did look at that and didn't think we were held to that.
I think our consultant, Mr. Seven.
As acting zoning administrator, I would interpret the ordinance that you need to break it up. Detached, attached, doesn't matter. You gotta vary it.
We treat all RT developments the same manner in terms of variation.
But we did exactly the same thing in Kilmer. What's the difference?
What's the difference? Different project, it's a PUD, everything's negotiated.
It's still R1T, right?
No, it's
Sir,
a
this is
PUD,
not-
the
this is
zoning's
not give and
PUD.
take.
I see, okay, all right, okay.
I do want to say one thing about landscaping. The way, putting my zoning administrator hat back on regarding landscaping, the way that we interpret the greenbelt requirement is between the right of way and the front of the building. I would treat this, even though it's the side of a building, as frontage for the purposes of greenbelt. So we would incorporate all the trees basically along this line as being in the green belt for Rochester. They're still short trees, but they're not as short as many trees. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
These trees here would count as well.
But in all due respect, I think that the planning commission is pretty much of the opinion that they do have to meet the requirements. If they choose to put additional trees inside their development, that's their choice. And it probably helps sell their units.
Again, Mr. Evans, even with those trees counting, they're still short. They're required by ordinance to provide those trees.
That's what I meant, along
Yeah.
Rochester Road?
Yes.
Okay, then I think there's no further comments. We need a resolution to postpone this until such time as the applicant consider our comments and come back to us.
Will we be? I'm sorry, go ahead. I think we need to understand I understand the tree routine. That's easy enough. We'll move the trees from the east side of the retention pond to the other side of the retention pond, and then they'll count. And we'll meet the ordinance without a problem. If that's your problem, we can do that. I think Tim indicated that earlier. That wouldn't be a problem. We just preferred them on that side. Our landscape architect felt it made it cozier for units 14, 15, and 16, with the retention pond, which is never particularly pretty, towards the outside.
Ms. Cruz?
So why move the trees from the retention pond and put them someplace else to make us happy? Why not keep the trees at the retention pond and then add a few more?
Well, I guess, we're already 40 over, so I thought I heard everybody say you would much rather have them on the outside than the inside.
No, we didn't say much rather, sir.
Oh, okay.
So I think the same argument that, this isn't a PUD and it's not a give or take. We are over the landscape, so we didn't anticipate that we'd have to be 80 trees over. So I guess there gets to be a point where we look at the zoning ordinance and we felt we were making this, we were making the attempt to meet the minimums. So I think it obviously is up to interpretation.
When I do a review, the first place I start is obviously zoning ordinance, and the second place I look at is your own plan submitted. Your own plan submitted indicate that you are short in trees in the required location, so you might need to work with your own landscape architect on those notes.
Trust me, we'll do that.
They do have the purview of approving it in different locations. So that's why I was.
I think it's pretty clear that they don't want to. They're not willing to do that.
I think it's clear at this point.
We got
yes.
that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And again, we're willing. I'd be happy to stipulate that tonight, but.
Well, that's just one of the problems. I think the other problem is the ones that have been voiced by at least 4 or 5 commissioners, is the articulation, the variation, that they all don't look like cookie cutter houses. And I think they do. That may be a matter of opinion. Our ordinance requires that they do look different. So that's the other thing that I think we need to put into the postponement.
Somebody else want to read?
Somebody else want to read the resolution? Go ahead.
Your chance, okay. Passed up a good one. Resolve that preliminary site plan approval pursuant to Article 8 of the zoning ordinance as requested for the proposed Bradley Square condominiums, including 31 units located on the east side of Rochester between Bradley and Shallowdale. Section 14 within the RT, one family attached residential, and R1C, one family residential districts be postponed for the following reasons. That the facades don't meet the requirements of our ordinance for enough variation, and it also doesn't meet our tree ordinance for landscaping along Rochester Road.
Is there a second to the motion?
Support.
Ms. Cruz? Any further discussion of the motion? If not, the roll call, please.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Krant?
Yes.
Ms. Koopa?
Yes.
Mr. Zaziga?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Abahidian?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Just for clarification, that's the ordinance for front facades, am I correct? Your ordinance requirements for front facades.
It is the front facade, however, those facades that are visible do, they have the purview to require some articulation for those, especially the ones along 1 through 4 that are gonna be highly visible from Rochester Road.
Okay, moving on to agenda item number 10, 2016 Planning Commission meeting dates. Want to introduce this at all?
Certainly, so every year, towards the end of the calendar year, we review the upcoming calendar, and we plan our meetings. For 2016, we typically have 2 meetings every month, the second and fourth Tuesday. We've already got a joint meeting scheduled on April 18th and on October 24th. And there are other conflicts, potential conflicts noted. I took out December 27th. I didn't think anyone wanted to really be here 2 days after Christmas, between Christmas and New Year, so that was an assumption on my part. Does everyone agree with that?
Yeah, good assumption,
Yes.
no, good assumption.
Good assumption?
Good assumption.
The questions we have regarding conflicts, November 8th is an election day. Typically, all the rooms are booked, including this one for ballots and whatnot. And we have a potential meeting on the 22nd of November, with Thanksgiving the 24th. If we take both of these meetings off of November, we don't have a meeting in November.
The only thing I was looking at this too, and I think for the November, the 2 dates, we should postpone each one of them by 1 week.
That's a good thought. We really can't have, well, I guess we could. If we have a planning commission meeting the 3rd Tuesday, that's the same evening as the zoning board of appeals. So we'd have at least one member that would have to be in 2 places at one time.
He's fast.
He is fast. Perhaps we could clone him.
Fast Bill.
But that's a potential.
That's the 29th?
No, that would be the 15th. If we had it the 15th, there'd be a conflict. We'd be definitely out of member, at least one member on the 15th.
Well, there is a half-hour difference, so maybe you guys could be done in 30 minutes.
There's a first time for everything.
That already happened. We even had those kind of meetings.
No, why couldn't we just delay it more than a half hour? We meet at 7, how about meeting at 8 or 8:30, depending on the docket, but,
Or 6 or 6:30.
yeah.
Yeah, push this one up.
Push
That
it
one's
up,
at
push this one up.
7:30.
Yeah.
Push it up. Look at
Yeah,
pushing.
make it 6:30.
November 15th at 6:30, 6 o'clock.
So have one meeting in November. It would be the 15th.
No, I think you still gotta have 2 meetings in November. Just
Right.
use the November 29th is not a conflict for any rooms, is it?
No.
Okay, let's do it
I
then.
don't believe so.
Then you're still 2 weeks away from October, or from December 13th, so.
And look at the 15th, having that earlier, at 6 or
Right.
6:30. Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
we'd have to consider taping. That would be videotaping. We'd have to consider the time difference. Both meetings are videotaped.
Good point, Kathy. That's the 15th we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see a problem there.
Yeah, unless we started they don't start till 7:30. Start this at 6 and be done.
You could
I mean,
postpone delay the ZBA meeting till 8 o'clock.
And we've had a lot of places where, a lot of times, with the ZBA hasn't even
Right,
met,
there's a
like
chance
four
ZBA
different
wouldn't meet.
times. They might not even have a meeting, you know?
And maybe they can work a schedule with us that way. You know, they can plan their meetings.
You know, that's probably not a bad idea, Brent, to check with their other administrator.
Paul.
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 Paul, thank you. Momentary lapse there. Trying to coordinate a time or a meeting or two that maybe we could work a little better that way.
I think that's doable.
another question,
Yes.
the October 24th and 25th. This is what I call the double whammy. This is what I experience when I have to do council on a Monday and then planning commission on Tuesday. Let me tell you something, Friday night, you're tucked in to bed at about 9:30, because it's a long week.
That's why we pay you the big bucks.
And I can handle it, no problem. But we've experienced a couple of these now with the Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah.
If you're okay with it, no problem, but it's a lot to ask for board members to attend back to back. We can keep it if you want, it's up to you.
I have a question. Are all of the joint meetings always going to be on Monday? I mean, is council never gonna join us on a Tuesday? Do they always get one night and we always get 2 nights?
Well, in all fairness, we're only there for an hour.
But that's my tennis hour, let's just be clear.
Okay,
Let's just be clear, that's my tennis hour.
okay.
I can't answer that. I can look into it.
Yeah, discuss it with.
I'm happy to discuss it internally and get
Yes.
back.
Yeah, I don't, you know, if it were Tuesday, that means then that they would have to come in for a separate meeting. Listen, I think we owe the council a big debt of gratitude to the fact
I
that
don't-
they're providing a
I
lot
don't.
more information to us
I
now
don't
than they ever did
disagree,
before.
I don't
You
disagree.
know, are we married
But-
to a Tuesday night for maybe one meeting, a Thursday?
I'd have to check, the only thing is I'd have to check calendars,
That
see the
might solve the
availability.
taping problem too.
It might, yeah.
Well,
It's just easier to remember.
I'll write you a note.
there you go.
I know you get in a groove, right? And
Yeah,
someone
right.
messes that mojo and then you're all
Because I've got
crazy.
everything lined up.
Right, I get it, I get it.
She's got tennis, what have you got?
I have tennis!
Well, I won't have PTA next year, that's one thing.
There you go.
Well, I don't know how you want to do this in terms of I'm sure we need a resolution for this, do we, or do we not need a resolution?
Well, we can, I mean, we could maybe potentially look at November 1st, but now we're getting, when you start to shift them around, you start to not have a lot of time between meetings. You know, and that, it's not as effective, there's also creates some challenges for
Well,
us.
that's a long way off. What if you just kept it the way that it is and we cross the bridge sort of when we come to it? It wouldn't be the first time that you've canceled a meeting a week before we were supposed to have it. I mean,
I agree.
I would just move the 22nd one for sure, and we can decide what to do about the November 8th one.
To the 29th, rather.
Yeah, move the
Yeah.
22nd to the 29th,
Yeah, I think that should
And then-
definitely be done.
and then we'll figure out what to do about
November
the
8th.
October 24th and the November 8th. Maybe we can move the council meeting, the joint meeting with council to the 24th.
Given that there's only one meeting in December, moving it to the 29th, there may be merit to that kind of,
December?
then moving it to the 29th, that
Oh,
it kind of
yeah.
functions like a
Yeah.
November
Yeah,
and
it's 2
December
weeks.
meeting, you know?
Yes, right.
I think there's
2 weeks
merit
later,
there,
yeah.
and maybe we move the 8th to the 15th and have it earlier, then we're clear that way.
Okay.
Well, I was gonna say, what about skipping the 25th and doing the 1st of November? Or do you need your 2 meetings in October?
Yeah, then you wouldn't have the 2 meetings right back to back.
So eliminate the 8th and 22nd, and eliminate the 25th, but have it the December 1st, the 1st, and the 29th, that's first,
Yeah.
first and
November 1st and
29th,
November 29th.
1st and 29th, yeah.
and call it good?
Call it good?
And we don't have to worry about the 15th, that time?
Yep.
That works.
I knew we invited you here for a reason, Julie.
Good suggestion, Julie.
Leave it to a woman to figure out the
That's what I was
calendar
gonna
ring, I'm
say.
just saying.
So we're amending this to eliminate,
Amen.
It's more than I'm willing.
That's the cherry on top.
Managing schedules.
we're eliminating the 25th of October and having a meeting the 1st of November instead.
Yes.
Eliminating November 8th, eliminating the 22nd, and having a meeting the 29th.
Yep.
You got that?
Yes.
Mhm.
Kath?
Yes.
Just
Maybe.
make- The brains of the elephant.
I got a
wanna
lot of
make sure-
months in there to forget, so please remind me.
Since he's done taking a resolution, maybe you can have Kathy send that out after she's amended it
Sure.
to all of us. That'd be great. Thank you. Well, we solved that one.
Do we need a resolution for this? Do we typically?
I didn't think we did. Well, I
Yeah, I
don't
think-
see one in here.
I didn't have one.
Administratively, you just made a decision.
And you have all 9 commissioners here tonight, so I don't think
I
that's
don't
a
think
problem.
you need a resolution because it just gets posted and it can be amended.
Okay. We've got
Okay.
agreement, we've got 100% concurrence.
We're ready for number 12, or I'm sorry, public comment for items on the agenda. Are you into that? Okay. Then we'll move to planning commission comment. Let's start with you, Mr. Senziga.
I'm just curious, do you have any reports on the transit center? How much it's been used or effective it's been?
I could find out what we have. I think Glenn does. I believe he does.
I'd be curious about
One of the things that's probably affecting it is the fact that the buses are still not going through there.
I believe that approval soon.
And with this settlement, will the buses be able to go through there or not?
I mean, that's the plan.
Still planned, okay.
Is there a cab organization or a way to contact a cab at the transit center?
You mean a
A
kiosk?
cab company?
A kiosk or something there? Is there anything in there that?
That was one of the deals. I thought we were gonna have buses, cabs, and trains, and,
Well,
Planes,
so you're
trains, and
noticeably absent with the cabs.
you count Uber as a cab company?
Why not?
Then yes.
Okay.
Uber's just at your fingertips.
That's true.
That's true. That's true. Anything else, Mr. Senzinger?
Well, the only other point was, I was really, I don't know, I was surprised at their joint meeting with the developers and where they're asking for incentives for the proposed zoning, you know, to build it in accordance with their master plan. And, you know, I was really, I won't say I was appalled, but I was amazed that they would bring that up. You know, for a developer to ask for incentives, you know, that was really surprising.
We are in every meeting we have.
That's what survived Fenton. Did you go to the conference?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. That was, they had a lot of incentives at the beginning of it because they had a large fund balance. Go ahead.
Can I make my comment now only because it's related?
Yes, certainly.
So, as you're all aware, we're 3 men in a truck. Myself, Mark Miller, Glenn Lapin are going to visit Dublin and Columbus, Ohio, and Carmel and
That's home.
Really?
Yes.
The bar is high. My expectation. So we're going to be visiting. We're going to be meeting with developers and looking at projects, successful, constructed, vertical mixed-use projects, and we're going to be finding out how it got done, why the developers were interested in it in the first place, how it got constructed, were there any incentives, financial or otherwise, that were provided, and we'll come back and we'll present to the City Council and the Planning Commission, let you know what we found out.
Is that coming up right after that? You're going next week, is it?
Next week for 3 days, 3 long days.
So the first joint meeting with the city council is not until April.
Those are only the ones that are scheduled in advance. There
Oh,
could be.
okay, there could be another one, okay, very good.
You probably need a tour guide.
Why not?
We're leaving real early on Tuesday morning.
Yeah.
I can get up anytime.
Mr. Hudson,
No comments.
Ms. Cooper?
Do we have snow days? What happens if there's snow?
Shovel it.
No, like if there's really heavy snow, what happens to a planning commission meeting?
I don't recall canceling a planning commission meeting because of weather.
And we've had some pretty bad snows.
Yeah. If it's bad enough, if it's a safety issue, we'll cancel.
So this is my first January coming in. I might be going to India.
Mr. Fennell?
Two questions. One for you, Brian, or maybe for the group. You know, I wasn't surprised to hear the comment from the developer about incentives, you know, for the construction that I guess we were looking for. We find attractive that they don't find financially viable, or at least that's what they articulated. I mean, do we have an appetite? And I know this is a hypothetical, but do we have an appetite for incentives to encourage that type of investment?
Probably a question more for council, I don't know, but, or the city manager. But,
Incentives can be in various forms.
yes.
They can be
In kind.
financial, they can be in kind, they can be, you could fast track. I mean, we're pretty fast. I mean, you can incentivize by putting certain projects at the top of the list, and there's different ways to do it. In terms of the financial, it's probably a question for city council, DDA in the future when they're in the whole.
As part of the tour that they're going on, and some other activities, we're also being charged to look at what are potential incentives and then bring those back to.
Help better answer that question, right?
Better answer what, yes.
How big the-
Because when you think incentives right now, first thing you think of obviously is financial, but there are many other kinds that might be a possibility. So we've been also charged to look at other incentive options.
Okay, that's all I had.
Mr. Appenini?
I just wanted to make a quick observation related to the screening issue that was brought up by various members. Maybe some of you made this observation as well, but this 3D rendering actually shows the evergreens at about 20 feet height to scale, when the plant schedule actually says 6 foot evergreens being planted. So that's a significant inconsistency that makes, I think, the issue of the 4 units on the north side even more of an issue that needs to be addressed, I think, and I think it was worth bringing up.
Good point. Maybe you, when you're working with them, you could communicate that too. Ms. Cruz?
Oh, where to begin tonight? Where to begin? We'll start with the transit center because we did that first. I can't even begin to tell you how disappointed I am that my transit center is surrounded by utility lines, a brick wall, poles that are 70 feet high. I mean, when you go to other metropolitan places and they have a train station or they have a mass transit center that everyone in the community goes and uses, I mean, it is a destination point. It is a focal point. And I'm just appalled at the amount of time, energy, money, and effort that the city of Troy has put into this project to make it successful. And then it's just surrounded by things that are underwhelming on every level. And then with respect to the Bradley Square Robertson home development, again, I love my city. I want it to be a world-class city. I want people to be proud to live here. And I want the projects that we do to reflect our pride in our city. And, you know, I know that these developers come in here with the idea that they're meeting the minimum requirements for our ordinances, but I just don't think that the minimum is enough to reflect what we deserve and what we're capable of. So I'm hopeful that when Robertson comes back in front of us, that next time around, he can do a little better than, you know, the cookie cutter and the bland rear views of the flat garages. That's what I have.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes, unfortunately, I was not at the last joint meeting. Was there anything else that came out of the panel discussion other than incentives that is noteworthy?
Is there a summary of that? I think there are minutes from that meeting, I know.
Have they been posted, or have they?
Yeah, they're.
Are they?
On the city website?
Might want to start there.
Nothing comes to mind, though, as just as a...
I was surprised about the number of vacancies, like in office. The statistics that they submitted, it was really amazing. And the other issue was the banker talking about how difficult it is to finance, you know, residential with commercial or restaurant type of facilities. And you know, that in my mind, I was wondering, you know, are we posting a goal that may be 30 years down the road, that we may be only be able to attain 30 years from now when the market changes, or when the office and the other uses are being used more and make it more marketable. So that's what I'm concerned about, is, you know, are we proposing a reachable goal in our master plan?
See, I didn't come away with that at all, Phil. My take was that, and they admitted, the banker even admitted, that there are projects that are going on right now and being completed in Birmingham that are to the 3 and 4 and 5 story, beautiful buildings. And the only justification they had was that Birmingham is considered to be a more walkable city. Well, I think that certainly needs to be something that we're focused on. And they didn't say that high rise was necessarily impossible. It all depends on the project. That's what I got. But it would be good. There's actually a tape of that meeting too, John. You could watch that. It would be good.
Was there anything discussed about the quality of development on Big Beaver?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Can someone talk to that a little bit?
Well, you know,
Or is it
as
too
we've
long
all
of a
talked about
discussion?
it before, that, you know, we lamented the fact that, you know, we're getting all of these 1 story or at the most 1.5 if you include the facade, fake front developments. And I think, you know, we've said we don't want that anymore. In fact, I think Fenton is a really good example. I don't know if you went to that presentation. They set a goal, and they didn't defer from that goal. And they had incentives for that. If you met the design criteria that they had set for those projects, you were approved in 60 days. So that's another type of incentive that I think we could certainly consider.
Thank you.
Yes,
And
Mr.
just,
Rader.
I didn't hear that presentation, the Fenton presentation. So did their ordinances prohibit the type of 1.5-story developments that we've seen on
Yeah.
Big Beaver? So I think
In the
that's.
central business
Right.
district, yes, right.
That feels like that's the choice, right?
Yes.
That we've got to
You know,
say, you cannot do certain things, and then.
Yeah, it's what we refer to as the sweet spot along Big Beaver, you know, from I-75 over to Coolidge, so.
And the market's got to support that.
Yes.
Or the market plus the incentives have to support that.
Okay, Mr. Kret.
Well, there's only one comment about that meeting, for John's edification. One thing I felt that the developers weren't thinking big enough or grand enough. They were thinking one story. They were not thinking, let's put a substantial development in Troy. They were just really small potatoes to me. That was my gut, reaction from those particular developers.
Financially driven?
I think so, for the most part. But what I suggested at the meeting was, let's look outside of Michigan.
Sure.
There's other states that have great developments all over our country, and we've got to, for some way, to bring them here to be excited about Troy, to bring in the dollars and really bigger ideas. So
It'd be interesting, if I could, it'd be interesting to hear what you hear about Detroit. There's quite a buzz, I think, going on about our city right now. And not Troy per se, but the Detroit area, how it's coming back, and everybody's starting to say this, they're turning it around.
You mean ask for their perspective of our market?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point.
Because that's exactly what Tom's speaking to, that there's got to be something here to attract those folks that are beyond our borders, if you will, to want to be here when things are starting that upswing. And I think there's a lot going on. I don't know how many of you go downtown very much, but it is a hub of activity.
Right. And the banker referenced that too, that there's a lot of the financial money is going to Detroit.
And we've got that timing behind us right now, so
Right.
let's move with it. Nothing else.
Okay.
Status on our nameplates?
Oh, yeah, hey, good going, Karen.
I have one other comment, if I may. I think until, to me, it's obvious that until we change the traffic patterns on Big Beaver, slow the traffic down, we're not gonna get a walkable community. It's just not gonna happen. And until there's some type of nightlife and some type of entertainment venue along Big Beaver, we're not gonna get young people to come. We have a neighborhood community, family oriented, and I believe in the long run, I think that's what's attracting people to Troy. And until we change those basic things to make it more attractive to younger people, we're not gonna get that type of development.
And piggybacking on what you just said, that was mentioned in the joint meeting, that Troy is a 12-hour community. Birmingham is an 18-hour community. And that's what makes them much more attractive. So,
And I know we do have the road commission, for my friend, and it's gonna be very difficult to slow the traffic down. It's a major thoroughfare in our region, and, it's
Unless
a
you
major impediment, I think, to developing Big Beaver.
unless you had a ring road, which was
So I was gonna just say that, what happened to the whole ring road concept that's been sitting dormant for years?
That was the Amasaki project.
And that was also brought up at that meeting, too.
It was a good meeting. I think there were a lot of things, but I think I do credit the city manager for, approving this project for the 3 men in the truck, and I think we've got to, hold the feet to the fire that we need to do this, and even if it means changing the master plan, I'm willing to change the master plan for some parts of that area. Or ordinances, probably ordinance, I don't know. Okay, I've said all my pieces too. Mr. Sabaton?
I've spoken too much today.
Mr. Carlisle?
I just have one question. When we have larger significant developments where we are starting now ask for modeling or perspectives, or are these helpful, were these helpful to you?
Yes.
Definitely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I know Mr. Taylor commented on.
When they're not misleading.
Yeah. Very good.
When they're in perspective, go ahead.
Ms. Cruz asked, I wanted to make sure I answered her question. Kathy's ordered them.
Yay! Go Kathy.
Or did you ask me to approve the order? We're gonna get them.
Look, oh no.
We're gonna get them. We're gonna get them.
Just smile and look good.
Kathy, could you respond to Ms. Cruz, please?
I did
Refresh my
not-
memory.
I did not get instruction to order.
Okay. We've researched it and it's stuck in my inbox right now.
Immediately, yes.
Yeah, and you're not waiting on Kathy, you're waiting on me, but we're gonna go ahead and get the nameplates.
Nice.
Can I ask for one more thing? When we sit in the council meeting, we get water. We get a jug of water here.
I want water here.
Well, we get water in the council meeting.
Yeah, but I'd like water here.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
We'll take care of it.
We're a really needy bunch, right?
We ask for so much.
That's fair, that's a fair deal. Exactly. Please buy the water.
Okay.
There is, yes.
A jug is fine.
Julie, did you have any comments?
No, just thank you again for letting us sit in tonight.
Okay. Kathy, do you have anything, other than to object to the order? You clarified that strongly, thank you. Okay, if there's no further comments, I think we're adjourned.